Weeks of campaigning, get-out-the-vote rallies, handshaking, and good old-fashioned stumping have come down to this, primary election day in Utah. The polls are closed. Ballot counting has been underway for about an hour and a half. Who will emerge from today victorious, and who goes home disappointed? The voters have decided. Welcome to Election 2010, KBYU 11's coverage of the Utah primary election. I'm Don Olson. Joining me are the founder of the BYU Center for the Study of Elections and Democracy, Dr. David Magleby, and the center's director, Dr. Kelly Patterson. Both are noted authorities on electoral politics. We'll be with you for an hour this evening with results from today's election and analysis of the Utah political environment. David, it's good to see you again. You didn't do the traditional exit polling this time.
Nope, the students are away. It's summer break, but the Center for the Study of Elections and Democracy did the Utah voter poll, an online poll, and the results of that we'll be sharing with the viewers tonight. And so far, it appears that the Utah voter poll is spot on with respect to what voters actually also did.
The numbers that we'll show you now are actual vote returns from the Lieutenant Governor's office, not exit interviews, but actual voting returns. With 30.4% of the districts reporting, Mike Lee 50.9%, Tim Bridgewater 49.1%. I think you experts would say that this is far too close to call.
It is.
For the U.S. Congress and the 2nd District, Jim Matheson, as expected, 67.2% over newcomer Claudia Wright, 32.8%, with just 20% of the precincts reporting.
Well, in both of those cases, we can see that the Utah voter poll that we'll be talking about in terms of the results would have predicted numbers in these ranges. And as we'll say, those data also suggest that the Lee-Bridgewater race is too close to call. Based upon that survey, we wouldn't have predicted the winner of the race. And the viewers are going to need to stay tuned, Don, because we don't know who's going to win that Senate primary yet.
You know, Election Day started bright and early for the candidates. Jessica Crandall caught up with Senate candidate Tim Bridgewater this morning.
Tim Bridgewater spent his last day on the campaign trail shaking hands and waving to the people he hoped would soon become his constituents.
The most important thing today is just to get out the vote. We've identified those people that we know are supporting us. We're trying to get them out to the polls so that they'll vote and just continue to push and push and push. Win some undecided voter support as well by calling, talking to them on the phone. Thank a lot of our supporters and just work hard until the polls close.
Before he hit the streets, he voted early at 7 a.m. at his precinct in Provo. Bridgewater and his entire family made the rounds together, his 2 sons and 2 daughters showing support for their father by sticking close to his side.
I think if it's a close race, people see the enthusiasm of supporters out, holding signs, walking around the areas, and I think that helps us to win the final undecided voters.
Jessica Crandall, Election 2010, Sandy.
What do you think, David? Does campaigning on Election Day help?
Well, at least helps calm the candidates' nerves. They don't know what else to do with themselves, Don. It's a hard day for candidates, and therefore I think it is important. In a situation like this, where so little is known about the 2 candidates, them being out and about is important today.
Campaigning on Election Day does make a difference, at least according to Mike Lee. KBYU's Adam Belinsky shows us what he did for most of the day.
While Mike Lee spent most of his day inside and on the phone, he still managed to travel around and spend time on the streets urging people to vote.
Well, our goal today is to get as many voters out as we possibly can. This election is close, and it's going to come down to who gets the most voters out. We've got a sophisticated grassroots network in every part of the state, and we're going to do it. We're going to get the votes out, and we'll win.
When Lee wasn't waving to passersby, he was hugging his supporters and telling them how much he appreciated them for coming out to cheer for him.
Today's everything. You know, a few people have already participated in early voting, but the overwhelming majority of all voters casting their votes will do so today, and so it's huge. This is the whole ball game.
In Sandy, Adam Belinsky, Election 2010.
At 5 o'clock, Lee headed over to Noah's in South Jordan, where, with his supporters, he's awaiting the results, along with the rest of us.
Well, I hope it's not an ark that's going to have a flood for 40 days.
The Utah voter poll assessed voters' view of these candidates. You said that that this election is way too close to call. You have a view of what voters think of them.
Well, that's right. The Center for the Study of Elections and Democracy has done an extensive survey. I'm going to invite our colleague Kelly Patterson to summarize that and to walk us through some of the data.
Yeah, we've been out in the field for 1 week with this poll, and as we saw with the election results, very close. And when we asked individuals to distinguish between the candidates on a favorability scale, what we see is it's dead even. And this is a 0 to 100 scale with 50 in the middle. Favorable being, very favorable being 100, 0 being quite unfavorable. And once again, 64-64, it's really hard to figure out how the voters would have distinguished between these two candidates.
It's a toss-up.
It's a toss-up.
In terms of how they see the two of them.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at how they would compare it with Bennett in the mix.
Well, the real interesting feature here is that both of these candidates ran against a standing incumbent, Senator Bennett. And those Republican primary voters didn't have the same favorable view of Senator Bennett as they did of both Lee and Bridgewater. Very interesting.
How enthusiastic were they for the candidates, did the survey find?
Well, as you can see by the numbers, 49% were fairly enthusiastic about their vote, 23%, almost 1/4, very enthusiastic about their vote. There must be some enthusiasm out there for these two candidates they picked, and even though that they don't seem to see a dime's worth of difference between them.
Now, again, this is of people who voted or of prospective voters?
These are people who were prospective voters with a very high probability of voting. This is a poll that really does a very nice job of likely voter screen, so we get people into the sample who really want to vote, who've been paying attention to the election.
So this wouldn't explain then why we've got such a low rate of turnout. We're going to be talking through the evening about how a very low number of Utahns actually turned out to vote today.
Yeah, it would be nice if we could survey those who didn't vote to find out why they didn't vote. This is of voters, and those voters who are turning out seem to be fairly enthusiastic about their choice.
This is an interesting point, because if Utah voting patterns hold as they have, you have about 10% of eligible voters in Utah who are deciding who the next U.S. Senator will be.
That's right.
That we don't know exactly what the voter turnout is, but everybody's predicting 10, maybe topside 12%.
I would only modify your statement on to say of registered voters. Eligible voters is often used to include those who could vote if they would bother to register. So we're looking, when we report the turnout numbers, of only those who register, and that is about 50 to 60%, maybe 70% in a good year, presidential year, who actually do. If you move, if you've been purged, if you didn't vote, those people are eligible if they would bother to register. Many of them didn't register, and even of the registered, only 10% voted.
Right.
So it's even more abysmal than that.
It is.
The Senate race, of course, is not the only race that we're watching this evening. In Utah's 2nd Congressional District, voters in the Democratic primary chose between incumbent Congressman Jim Matheson and political newcomer Claudia Wright. Jake Taylor shows us how these two spent their election day.
Today, Representative Jim Matheson faces something he never has before, a challenger for the Democratic primary in Claudia Wright. Primary elections generally have a much lower voter turnout, and so both Matheson and Wright spent this election day campaigning and trying to make sure it was their supporters who made it out to the polls.
My campaign has been very aggressive at finding who our supporters are and making sure we get them to the polls, and that's been both through lots of phone calls. We've got people literally knocking on doors starting this morning.
Wright's camp spent much of the morning personally calling voters before she took part in a honkin' wave in downtown Salt Lake City.
Toot toot! Beep beep! Claudia Wright! Toot toot!
I think people have basically, for our voting, have been very energetic. We've had a lot of volunteers come forward.
Each camp tries to get out the vote till the polls close at 8 o'clock. After that, they can only wait for the results to come in. In Salt Lake City, Jake Taylor, Election 2010.
Let's look at some more polling data from the Utah poll. This is you're looking now at hypothetical head-to-heads.
That's right.
Now, I think one of the outstanding questions was, if Senator Bennett could have made it out of the convention, how would he have fared in a primary? We asked our primary voters that very question, and what we find is that candidate Bridgewater would have defeated Senator Bennett. Now, Senator Bennett didn't get a chance to campaign, didn't get a chance to spend his money and make his case, but once again, I think this is indicative of the anti-incumbent feeling that is clearly out there in that electorate.
Well, and that's a big margin.
That's a big margin. It would be hard for a senator to overcome that.
Right. There's been a lot of speculation that if they hadn't had the convention, had gone to a primary system like Indiana,
yep.
Without the screen that took Bennett out, the convention, that Bennett could have won. This suggests it would have been very hard for Bennett to.
Right, and we see this essentially the same sort of relationship when we ask a hypothetical contest between Senator Bennett and Mr. Lee.
The margin is even wider.
The margin is a little wider, maybe leading some people to speculate that perhaps Mr. Lee's supporters are a bit more enthusiastic.
Well, those are exciting data, Kelly. That's going to just a tempter for what's going to be coming later, I assume.
It is.
Okay.
Let's look at some more numbers. Do we have more election numbers now? By the way, you'll notice that that on the bottom of the screen throughout the evening we will have some other races of interest for you. But let's go now to the U.S. Senate race again.
Those are the numbers I think we had before. 51-49, I think is exactly what we had last time up.
And about 31% of the precincts reporting. What do we have for the second district now?
It's updated a bit.
Oh, here we are. Here we are updated now. That went to 40%. Okay, let's look at the second district here, and Jim Matheson is still very comfortably ahead of Claudia Wright, as we expected. Can we go back to the Senate? We missed that updated. The screen changed just as we saw the updated numbers coming in. There we go. We have almost 40% voting now, and Mike Lee still about 2 percentage points ahead, but still way too close to call.
That's been narrowing, however. It's important for you to know, Don. The earliest margin was wider for Lee. He actually told his supporters, I guess at NOAA's, that the numbers were good, but they were very preliminary. I think he may have known that it's going to tighten, and it is in fact tightening, as the voter poll would have predicted.
Yeah,
the voter poll did predict an ultimate outcome, did it not, or did it?
Well, it did, and that ultimate outcome was a 2 percentage point win for Mr. Bridgewater. So, but once again, well within our margin of error. Those aren't exit poll numbers, and this poll was out in the field for 1 week, so it was able, I think, to capture some of the dynamics that we saw in this race, and that is that it really did tighten up as we got closer to election day.
These two candidates started as they tried to differentiate one from the other. They turned kind of negative. I mean, they're the same on the issues.
There's not much to differentiate.
No, and so it wasn't really dirty by national standards, but they were throwing a little mud at each other.
Oh, they certainly were.
Well, you got two things in this race that are really important. One, they knew it was close. And two, that they couldn't differentiate themselves from each other. And that's just a recipe for a real mudfest.
Why don't we look at some numbers about the Wright-Matheson race from the Utah voter poll, and we'll pull up first how they viewed the candidates in terms of the 0 to 100 favorability thermometer.
Yeah, once again, this is of the Democratic candidates. Representative Matheson, rating of a 62 out of 100. Pretty good for a Democrat in a statewide. Well, this is in the second congressional district among Democratic Party voters. Claudia Wright not doing quite as well, 54, and Sam Granado, who is going to be the Senate candidate coming this fall at 58. But once again, I think these numbers are quite good for Representative Matheson, showing once again that he is still one of the most favorably viewed politicians in the state.
Well, and for a candidate as unknown as Granado is,
yeah.
To do that well, better than Wright had done, may means at least among Democrats, the small fraction that exists in the state, he's going into the general election.
And I guess I would add too that 54 for Claudia Wright is not all that not all that bad, because she pretty much came out of nowhere to challenge Representative Matheson.
Yeah, she answered an ad on Craigslist.
Yeah, it was a rather interesting process by which she received the.
You directly measured asking voters how enthusiastic they were. These are those data.
Yeah, and once again, I think the Democratic voters in the 2nd Congressional District, when asked to assess the two candidates, over 75